You know, the main thing I wanted to talk about today was something that, I experienced again this morning at a heightened level. And I just want to bring about this, two things I thought about this morning. One is, if every time I said something that I've already said, I said to you, hey, I've already said this, then I would say that every time I talk. So I'm going to try to stop saying that. Things like, hey, I know I've told you this before, or hey, I know I've said this recently. Because everything I've said before and everything I've said recently, that's kind of the point. So relentless repetition is the key. And becoming successful is a process, it's not an event. You will see it sneak up on you over time, but you also have to give it room to grow and develop. I mean, worst case scenario, you just don't quit and you hang in there. And you just keep putting yourself in the right environment so that the right information can continue to have an impact, and things will happen. One of the things to remind you of is that you'll ruin 2 or 3 or 4 teams before you build your actual team. That's just a learning process. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but I'm just telling you statistically that's the way it works. The other thought is, so you have relentless repetition, you have, commit and never quit. You have this idea that, that you're going to do certain things a few times before you learn how to do it the right way. And you can look at those things as negative or positives, but it's just the truth. It's just reality. It's not negative or positive. It's just reality. It's just the way it is. But the last thing that I was focused on a ton this morning was, I got, as you guys kind of witnessed, I started getting a lung infection last Friday at the beginning of our super event. And then, historically for me, what typically happens, and now I'm in the tweener stage, but what historically has happened for me pretty much my whole life, and has become repetitiously predictable, is that I'll get sick, usually with a virus, and then I'll get a secondary infection, which is bacterial. That'll be the big problem, and that'll turn into bronchitis or pneumonia. That'll last a month or 2, typically. So I got something last Friday, and then basically was just at a point where I could not do my exercise as consistently as I wanted to, just because I didn't have it in me. And there was at least one moment where I thought, and this was only a few days after, I think this was maybe Monday, no, it was Sunday night, but I clearly thought, and I haven't thought this in a while, but I clearly thought, I'll wait another hour, and if this doesn't get better, I'm going to have to go to the emergency room. I mean, and I haven't thought that in a long time, so it was pretty bad. But the reason I bring this up is it kind of put me off my schedule, on my exercise schedule and that type of thing. And then the last probably 24 hours or so, I started feeling like, well, I think I'm turning the corner. I feel like, I'm getting better. Now the key is just to try to keep any secondary infection up, which I know better things to do now than I did even a year ago. I've become more mindful of things, and so it's just a learning process. I mean, even on things that are predictable, that have been happening for 40 years, or close to that, 35 plus, things can change. You can make changes. You can, and here's what I believe is likely the case. This will probably be the first time in many years that I've gotten sick like this and in 7 days it was gone. And what was that due to, if that's the case? Yeah, it's due to, it was due to, now I'm drawing a blank, what do they call that? Pre-care, what do they call that?
Preventative?
Preventative care. So it was preventative measures that stopped that. And the same thing applies in the business, right? There are preventative things that you can do, like never missing training, never missing big events. Preventative care in your business is doing daily activity, reading your goals daily. When people stop doing these things is when they become more susceptible to the viruses. And I guess, it's obviously possible that I could still get very, very sick in excellent health. You hear people having heart attacks that are marathon runners, So there's still things that can happen, but I already look back on the last 12 months and I've already experienced 3 times something that I never remember experiencing ever in my life, where 3 times in the last 12 months, and it gets to a point where it happens once and you kind of go, well, maybe that was just a fluke. It happens twice, but then it happens 3 times, and then you have an experience like what I'm experiencing now, and you go, it just can't be a coincidence, stuff happens that often. But 3 times in the last 12 months, I knew I was coming down with something, and in 24 hours, it was gone. And the reason I knew I was coming down with something is when you have lung problems like I do with very severe asthma, before you feel the other symptoms of getting sick, you start to feel a tightening in your lungs and a restricted breathing. That's what I've experienced my whole life. So I would always say to my mom or my wife at the time, I would say, I'm getting sick. And it was because all of a sudden now I was needing my asthma medication more frequently. And it was usually 24 to 48 hours before the other symptoms started to show. And so, in a way, it was somewhat helpful because you knew something was coming. But the reality is, you can do the right measures, the right things on a consistent basis to build up a resilience to absolute failure in business, And you just, I remember Rich saying many, many years ago that the reason he is where he is because he never got tired of doing the same thing over and over and over again. You just can't allow yourself to get tired of it. You have to try to stay fresh. You have to try to stay excited. You've got to constantly be reading your goals and developing new goals and trying to keep yourself motivated. So I got off my game, and one of the most dangerous things that can happen is that you get out of good habits, because here's the reality. It will, and this is just a rule of life that we have to remind ourselves of. It will always take no effort to have bad habits. Bad habits take 0 effort, because bad habits are typically built on idleness, laziness, and these things are easy because to be idle, I just have to lay down on the floor right here. It takes no effort. There literally, a bad habit is built on premise of no activity and no energy. It takes little resistance, right? Or no resistance. It's giving into things that is what makes a bad habit, right? Would we agree on that? It will always take effort and energy to create and keep good habits. But it takes more energy and effort to create the habit than it does to keep the habit. But it's still important to note that will always take energy and effort even to maintain the habit. It might take less, right? It's like I think the best example is the plane and liftoff. That it takes more fuel and more energy to get the plane off the ground than it does to keep it in the air, but it still takes fuel and momentum and energy to keep it in the air, right? So, because there's friction, right? So there will always be some resistance and some friction to good habits. So I received the first serious level of resistance to my health, habits in the last 7 days. And so last night I set my alarm for the first time in 7 days. I set my alarm at 4:45 in the morning, which which allows me to get up and kind of do my scriptures, do my prayers, get dressed, and get to the gym. And I still normally beat C to the gym by 15 minutes. He shows up around 5:30, 5:40. And the only reason I initially went there at that time was so that I could work out with him. It was terribly inconvenient for my schedule, right? Because I don't have to get up at that time. But over time, what did I discover about getting up at that time? Was it any longer about meeting him there? What was it about?
That's the sensing.
What I was
Doing the activity that will get you to the end goal.
What I was reminded of this morning was this, and this is the first time I've done this in 12 months, or, that decision was done about 6-7 months ago, to do 2-a-days and get up at, if you remember that, and to get up at, 4 o'clock to 4:45, whenever, if my alarm wakes me up or my body wakes me up. But here's the first time I experienced this morning, because I was coming off of a week of not doing that. This morning when my alarm, or last night when I set my alarm, I set it at 4:50, but I set it with a contingency. I set it, and I remember even thinking to myself, and if I would have thought this last night, I probably would have talked myself through this and realized it was a bad decision. But last night, I remember saying to myself, all right, I think I'm feeling better, so I'm going to set it at 4:50, and if I feel good in the morning, then I'll get up and go. What's the problem with that?
It's not definitive.
Yeah, it's a commitment with contingencies.
Yeah.
There's an out. And so guess what? The alarm went off at 4:50. Actually, truth be told, I woke up at like 4 o'clock on the button. And historically, what would I do? Get up. But in this case, I was like, well, I remember thinking, well, my alarm set for 4:50, so, and I've been sick, so just rationalize through this process, so I go back to sleep. Then my alarm goes off at 4:50, and I remember thinking to myself, well, maybe I should just rest, because I've been sick, and I need sleep, and I need to recoup, and I start rationalizing immediately. I then lay there for a few minutes and decide, well, I'm going to go, I go use the restroom. Then I get back in bed. I haven't done that in, months and months and months and months. But after laying there for a minute, I remember thinking to myself, this is what I thought to myself, as good as I feel like more sleep will be, I bet I'll feel better if I just get up and start my day. So I had to make a conscious decision to oppose the resistance. It might seem like a stupid story to tell you, but
It's not.
it so applies to business and to everything else. So I still get to the parking lot, and I do some additional scripture, study in my car, and I still beat him there by 10 minutes. And then he shows up, which is no dig on him. He gets up and does that before work, and he's got his own incredible disciplines that he expresses that are amazing. But I still get there early, and then I walk in, and I remember the feeling I had when I pulled into that parking lot was how good I feel that I made that decision, how much better I feel, and how much better that felt than sleeping longer. Where does that good feeling come from? What is it attached to?
Integrity.
Integrity, yeah.
You do what you
Keeping
say.
your word to yourself,
Yeah.
integrity. It comes from controlling things that you can control. And I'm just going to encourage you to control more of what you can control this week. Get up earlier. Take control. Make a decision about some things that you're going to do. If you're struggling emotionally, be honest with how you feel. Share those feelings, which means that you're not suppressing those things. Be honest about it, confront it, and then set some goals to move past it. And listen, it's probably not a good time to be around me if you just want to be chill. And Tiffany even found out this morning because I sent her a message and I said, let me tell you how I felt, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, I am bent on having healthier relationships with people, particularly people close to me. And so let me tell you, I've got to tell you how I felt when this and this and this happened. But I also want to know how you feel so I can understand how you feel different, right? But if you want things to be different, you have to do some things different. You can't have different with the same. And there's a lot of you guys that are just waking up each day and doing the same thing and expecting something to be different. But it can't work that way. If you want something different, you have to do some things different. And, that's just the way life is. And again, I mean what I said this morning. I put minimal effort into running this business. I get one recruit, write up 20-something thousand points, and it's literally just the beginning of that process. In fact, nothing that I've written has come from that one recruit. But do you think it's unrelated? It's all related. Listen, there is a lot of things that many of you have in the pipeline right now, but you're procrastinating getting it done because you're caught up in a series of just bad habits. Once I decided to engage a little bit, it then caused me to look at my pipeline and start to squeeze some things. And I even started to, Don can tell you, I even started to step up in terms of what I was expecting him to do. So, hey, where are we at with this one? Where are we at with this one? Where are we at this? These decisions were done simultaneously because it's hard to just move one part of your life forward. Usually how you do one thing is how you do everything, is my point. So if you make a decision, things step up. I mean, I've got a note this morning. Well, I'll make the note publicly to Dawn now. Where are we at with Grace's policy, her term policy? Because it's not showing as completed. So my point is, had I not made a conscious decision to move some things forward in one area, I would have likely not advanced anything forward in any other area. The reality is, I think, and I don't know what the ratios are. I could be screwing this up, and this is no offense on Don. This is just an example. If I didn't say anything to Don about business that I had in the pipeline, would he eventually follow up on that stuff? Yeah, eventually. But if he's got an intention to follow up, but I also am squeaking about it, then does it happen quicker?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it works. So my point is, what do you need to step up? Do you need to get up a little earlier? Do you need to initiate your day in a more positive way? Do you need to redefine what your goals are? Do you need to set up 2 appointments today to make yourself feel like you're proactive? I think you do. What do you got to do to take the bull by the horns and control what's going to happen? Instead of being reactive, what can I do to be proactive? What can I do to take control over what's happening? And that's really the premise for the statement that I made. Can't I decide to do it even if you don't do it? No. Because if I count on that as a leader, I am screwed. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, how many, we talk about numbers, but, how many real active people do I have in my team? Is there 50 or 60?
I don't think so.
Who knows? I tried to think about, are there 50 or 60? Maybe somewhere in that range, 40, 50, 60.
What's your definition of active?
But if I have to count on somebody in that group to step up and do something more than I've done, and then in hopes that will spark everybody else to do something more than I've done,
Right.
it's just a horrible plan.
Yeah.
Statistically, it's just not going to happen. It could, but I don't want to have a future based on hopes of getting lucky. I want to create my own luck. But how many of you believe, listen, you could say me, or you could use Rob's name, or you could do anything. But the best one is me. How many of you believe that if I went and did 15 to 25 personal recruits for the next 3 years, that I would be at $1 million income plus in 3 years? How many of you believe that would be the case?
Yeah.
You don't even debate it, do you?
No.
Like in your mind, it just seems absolutely doable. So what's the number for you? Because if I said Jace's name, if I said Jace would be at $1 million of income, and I'm just going to speak for you, feel free to disagree. But if I put Jace's name in there and said, Jace, do you believe if you did 15 to 25 personal recruits in the next 3 years, you'd be at $1 million income? I think the answer is no. And I don't think I believe that. But it's not as reasonable of a question, because I'm already a chunk of the way there, right? But what is the number for you? If you did 15 to 25 personal recruits the next 3 years in a row, if I said, will you be at 100,000, how long do you have to think about that one?
Not at all.
Not at all? What do you think?
Yeah.
I don't have to think about it at all. To me, that seems like a stupid low number.
Yeah.
Now, if I said, if you did 15 to 25 personal recruits for the next 3 years, would you be at $250,000 of income? What's your answer to that? Maybe. It proves a point, though. Because if it's easy for you to answer absolutely to 100, then what if in 3 years you did that, and you were sitting at 100,000 in income to 150? And then I said to you, what if for the next 2 years you did 15 to 25 recruits at the new you, the new, more developed, complete you? What if for the next 2 years you did 15 to 25 recruits? Would you be at 250 then, if you were already at 100 to 150? Yeah, that seems very reasonable. Listen, and so we can do that until we get to 1 million, is the point. Right?
Yeah.
Right now, that's a bit of a big leap, maybe for you mentally. It's not as big of a leap for Rob. Why do you think?
He's almost there.
Because he's at almost 100 now, and he was at as much as 160, 170, 180 in the past. So to him, the 250 number already seems doable. So it's not that big of a stretch to say, what if you did 15 to 25 personal recruits for the next 3 to 5 years? Would you be at 500? What do you answer to that?
It's a pretty good possibility.
Yeah. But if I said 1 million, it starts to become a little less,
So,
it becomes a little distant, but it still seems somewhat, like it's within the realm of possible, right? But that's the point. You have to just keep eating the elephant one bite at a time. Keep moving forward, right? I'm just telling you, it felt great sitting in the parking lot at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was because I controlled what I could control. And when I went in and got on the stair climber for 30 minutes, that machine is the devil, but I love it. For some reason, I love it. I hate the elliptical. Like, I should probably just do the elliptical more because I hate it. But the stair climber, most people will say that's the worst machine there is, but for some reason I hate it, but I love it. And for me, the treadmill is easy, so I should probably do that less. But the point being, whatever it is that you need to attack, it's time to attack it. Start moving forward just a little piece at a time. Start controlling what you can. And you'll feel great when you're in the parking lot. Prior to that, you're going to go through a little debate. Do you think I'll go through as much of a debate tomorrow?
No.
Maybe any. Because I'm at a resolved kind of point in my head where tomorrow I probably won't debate at all. I'll probably get up and just gladly rock and roll. Now, I had a conversation with my coach today, for what it's worth. I know many of you are trying to step up your fitness side. And so I thought our conversation today was interesting, but being that the new game plan is to add mass, he's suggesting 2 rest days a week, which I find interesting, but it makes sense. If you're going to build mass, you really push it for 3 days, and then you let your body repair and grow, and then you tear it down again. So he wants me to do a rest day on Wednesday and a rest day on Sunday. But that's interesting to me. Like, do I sleep in on those days and run the risk of messing with the habit and making it harder, or do I just get up? You know, something to think about. So
depends on what happens if you do.
yeah,
If it proves restful and beneficial,
yeah.
then that's one thing.
So maybe one day a week I sleep until 7 in the morning, and if I feel rejuvenated, great. But if I don't, then I got to rethink my plan.
Yeah.
As my other coach said, you need to listen to your body more.
Yeah.
Which sounded like hocus pocus a while ago, but now I think she's onto something. Yeah, listen to your body. But then I heard another guy say this, and I loved it. He said, "I'm not listening to my body. What the hell? My brain is here. My body doesn't have a brain. I've got a brain, so I tell my body what to do." And I was like, okay, that makes sense too, coming from a man's perspective. So there's probably a fine line between there. But
about till the point that you're thinking about going to the ER.
the ER, that's right. So, but there's all sorts of things to do. You know, I'm about to go. Today I blocked out some time to look into hormone therapy. You know, I'm at the age where all that stuff is out of whack. You know, you start losing testosterone about the age 35 from what I've read so far. And so now I just got to find out where's the right place to go, what do you do, who do you talk to. You know, I'll call my my buddy today, which is my primary doctor, and ask him what he thinks and see what and of course his opinion will be come see me. But, you know, the bottom line is always be thinking about what I can do to move in the right direction, you know. And I have a friend of mine who did that, and he said it was the difference of night and day. So he almost can't believe the difference in his life from energy and all these things. So there's always another level, you know. There's always something better you can do if you keep open-minded and keep working in the right direction. All right, so goals. What's your primary, what's your goals this week as far as one-on-one set today? And let's say one-on-ones for the week. So how many one-on-ones are you going to set today, and how many one-on-ones are you going to do for the week, Rob?
I'll set 2 today, and I'll get a total of 8 for the week.
Okay.
I'm pretty much non-existent right now, so next week it'll be over 10.
Awesome.
We'll put some in the pipeline. Let's get rolling.
Awesome. Rocky?
I'll set 4 appointments.
Okay.
I should be able to do 2 today, and then
Okay, Jace?
I'll set one today.
Okay,
I'll get 3 for the week.
okay. John?
I'll go for 2 today, and I'm gonna say I don't know on the rest of the week, cause I may be down in Price.
Okay.
But I'll try and set some down there too, but we just had a new baby,
Well,
so we're gonna go down and support mom and dad.
congrats. Don?
1 and 4.
1 and 4. I'll just remind you of the statement that Bryce said, and at some point, hopefully one day you wake up and this really resonates with you. You're just not doing enough. You can do more, and you're just not doing enough. You gotta push it. And if you think you're doing enough, you're not. I'm not saying that to discourage you, I'm saying it to open up a window of thought in your head where you go, yeah. And look what happened to him. 9 recruits to 29, 100,000 points to 300,000. You know, probably 60, 70,000 of income up to 250. Boom. Big things happen. All right? Okay, thanks everybody.